there's a way for you to start experimenting with the types of things you want to say that involves no one else. The idea that someone else is going to figure this out for you is, again, simply not true.
Welcome to Taking Care of Lady Business, where we get real about what it takes to succeed, whether it's in business, life, or both. I'm talking to game-changing and visionary women who've broken barriers, built empires, and redefined success on their own terms. They'll share their strategies, secrets, and the no BS advice you need to rise to the top. I'm your host, Jennifer Justice, also known as JJ. Let's get into it. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Taking Care of Lady Business. I'm Jennifer Justice. Today on the pod, we have Andy McNicol, not only a longtime friend of mine and a single mom by choice like me, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but she's also the founder of AMstudio and a senior partner at Avitas Creative Management. Hi, Andy.
Hi, JJ.
Did I say all that right, by the way?
You did. It was impressive. I was just going to be like, well done, you. Yes.
I know. I'm always impressed with myself when I can remember that long. Thanks for coming on. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me. As you know, I'm a longtime fan of yours in all your many forms and really love listening to the pod. So I'm excited to be here.
Oh, good. Thank you. I want to get into what it is that you do, because I know it is a very hot topic amongst female founders in particular, women who are trying to build their brand, etc. So give us a little bit about what you do in both of these positions.
So in both of these positions, I help people figure out the book they should write. I think that books and content, but primarily books, and I started my career as a literary agent, have a way of extending your brand and extending whatever real estate you have as an expert in your field. So I think that for female entrepreneurs, for storytellers, for creators, it has been important to figure out what that first book is. So people come to me to sell that first book, and they also come to my studio to help them figure out or interpret what it should be and how to write it. Some people have an amazing company and personal story and not the ability to distill what that first book should be. So that is why I have both careers. So you're coming to me as a literary agent to sell an idea that you have. You're coming to the studio to help us, for you to be helped in marketing and finding what that idea is. And then the brand partnerships that can exist around it.
Right. Amazing. That's what's so helpful, right? Because old school book publishing, you come, you get an agent, they sell the book. And then they don't really help you market it so much. Like they have some of their channels, which are bookstores, right? Traditionally, but it's not like it. That's kind of the part that's most, important. It's like, you can't just put in a bookstore and people roam around bookstores anymore. I mean, we see them closing and, just not.
I also think traditional publishing, quite frankly, in the last 10 years has suffered a crisis of, just simply the amount of books that they're selling, how they sell them, and how people discover them. As with everything, there's a huge discoverability problem because there is so much content in so many verticals. So whereas before the traditional book business would be like, oh, I have a company, I'm an expert, I'm on television, I do this, let me sell a book. Now, first of all, there's so many different ways to be well-known and famous. So everyone has a platform by which to say something. Mm-hmm. And secondly, there's only so many books a traditional publisher can be involved in. So that we've seen a rise in independent publishers and, quite frankly, hybrid models. When the former president of Random House starts her own hybrid publishing company and James Clear goes with her, who is one of the biggest stars of Random House, the business is changing to accommodate a lot of entrepreneurs and self-starters who need books and who need valuable content for other reasons than simply writing a book. So I think that the business has expanded. So the idea that you go into a literary agent and say, hey, I have this book, let me sell it to Random House, St. Martin's, Simon & Schuster is one path, but it's certainly not the only path.
Yeah.
So it's expanded a lot, I would say, in the last probably 5 has been the big growth.
Wow. Okay. So let's go back to your background. Where did you start your career in this?
I started my career at a brief stint at Vogue, which showed me I didn't want to be in magazines. So that was good. And then I started my career as a temp. It was called a floater at what was then William Morris. And I pushed a mail cart and I did all of those things. And then I was there through 2 mergers where we became WME. And I was in there for 22 years. So I started as a temp and wound up as a partner.
As a book publisher, agent, right?
As a book agent. And then in this department, which actually wound up becoming sort of the beginning of how I built my own career, which was called the Branded Lifestyle Group, that a colleague of mine, John Rosen, it was his brainchild, to gather a group of people who did interdisciplinary work. The agency model for getting paid is very strange. It's all about the signing agent. If you are lucky enough to meet someone in passing and sign them, but they never do anything in your vertical, you still get the most paid by the large agency. So in your background, if you had brought me a music client and I signed them and then they never recorded an album, but they became a huge book literary client and they became a huge person, then that music agent would still get the majority of the commission.
Right.
So they could work in very different fields. And John sort of saw that and was like, why don't we all get together and sign people as a collective whole?
Right. Because there are 360 areas that they can make money in, right?
Absolutely.
Right.
And the rise of that came from lifestyle talent, which I also geared myself towards. So I was a young agent. Let's say that all of the Booker Prize and Pulitzer Prize winners were being well taken care of by people who are not me. Yeah. Even though I'd gone to Yale, I had this sort of imposter syndrome about following my own interest and creativity early in my career. I was like, I went to Yale. I should be representing historians and prize-winning fiction. And at the time, the people who were not being cared for were the stars of the Food Network, who all wanted cookbook deals. And there was money to be made there, but it was a nascent business. And I was like, I don't know. Do I want to be in that business? Do I want to sort of do fashion books and cookbooks and how to? Meanwhile, that's what I gravitated towards naturally as a person. I thought, I can't show that. I want to be smart. And now I laugh because it became such a huge part of the business that everyone wanted to get into. And I was just sort of in the beginning, I was like, ooh, do I want to take this turn? Because there are, people, I want, national book award winning, and there's no national cookbook award. You know what I mean? Right. So I got into it, and it turned out that it was a great lesson on what you're naturally attracted to. Truly, is you should probably align with what you're doing for that kind of amplified success. So I love a cookbook. I read them before I go to bed. I love fashion. I do. I love fashion. I love what would be considered Oprah's Living Your Best Life books. I love them all. And It's no coincidence that that's where I made ultimately my career and ultimately where I still do it.
So basically following your passion, although you were conflicted because you went to this super, highly sought after Ivy League, higher education school where you're expected to do all these amazing things. And then you end up doing cookbooks, which is super successful, but you felt like you weren't living up to the Yale. Yeah.
I felt like I wasn't living up to quite frankly, my master's degree. I was like, oh my God. And it makes me laugh now because how many people use their college degree, quite frankly, to do anything? It's not a professional degree. I majored in art history. It's so funny. But I thought that being a literary agent was not necessarily being commercial. And that's the other thing, this sort of sense of literary or high value and commercial. And there was that bigger divide then where now it really is about numbers and distribution. And certainly those numbers dwarf the majority of anything else you see in the path.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny. I had this similar thing because I went to Cornell Law School, and being an entertainment attorney, it was like, they were like, no, you should be clerking for a Supreme Court justice, not like,
literally, one of my friends from college did clerk for a Supreme Court justice.
Yeah.
And I was like, and I'm doing cookbooks. How is that working?
Exactly. But ultimately, it's like, I knew how I could be successful and passionate about it, And to me, it was well-deserved, and they deserved somebody with an education from Cornell instead of, the law school you could walk into, like, you know what I mean? And so, that's how I kind of, yeah.
I think for me, the people that I wound up really loving working with, early Food Network personalities, some I still work with, was I loved it. Like, I watched the Food Network. I was going to get the recipes and I knew in that building at that time, I was that person in our book department and what was going to be of use. And it taught me the beginnings of a 360 business. Before that was what everyone wanted to be. Remember, this is probably 15 years ago, at least.
Yeah. 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 And, similarly, like when I interviewed for my job as an entertainment attorney, I was a massive fan of hip hop, which nobody would look at me and think that. And Jay-Z's album, Reasonable Doubt, was my favorite album. And, went on to do all his hip hop and represent the guy. I was his first attorney, with the book behind you, Mark Ronson, and did his first deal with Adele, a very then unknown Adele, and a very then unknown Amy Winehouse. And did his deal. I mean, his first one was Nika Costa.
I remember. Her book is back here too. We did it at Avitas.
I love it. See?
We did it at Avitas.
Yeah. Amazing. All right. So you followed your passion and that led you to real success, because that is something, you were in this business, you found your niche in it, and you're like, okay, this is what makes me really passionate about being in this business. And then you were there and you made partner, and you were there for 22 years. What happened?
So what happened was, we became a very big company. So when I started at what was then William Morris, it was a large company, but we were primarily an agenting business. When we went through and became WME and then ultimately Endeavor and became a public company, which now has moved back to a private company in the last year, we became a business that did everything from sporting events to experiential to modeling to sports. We weren't in any of those businesses when I began. And it became a very big company. And large companies operate differently than even sort of small or mid-sized companies. And you have to want to be working at that speed. You have to want to be responsible to a large number of colleagues in that way. I was in staff meetings. The majority of 3 out of the 5 days a week were majority staff meetings at my level. And that seemed not necessarily how I wanted to spend my time. However, that was the remit of that company. And I think it also took me a minute to learn that there is, first of all, the idea of staying in one place for 22 years seemed insane to me when I started. It seems insane to me now that was my only professional experience. It was like 10 jobs over those 22 years, but it was the same place. So there was a level of comfort I had. I knew what I was doing. What happened was this. I knew I was expecting a child. And I knew my life was going to change because I was doing it on my own and it was by choice. So it was a very long road. So having a child was not a surprise to me in my 40s. And COVID was just happening. And that rocked the representation business, certainly the live events business. Things were changing rapidly. And I got laid off during that time. Yeah. It was absolutely heartbreaking to me because it was the only place I had worked. It was a real identity crisis. It was also a tremendous opportunity. And I felt all of those things at once, both forward thinking in a way that I hadn't felt in 22 years. And because I was having a baby and really fucking scared, really so scared because I was a storyteller for all of my clients and I hadn't been one for myself.
Yeah.
And I didn't know how to do it. And I was heartbroken. I think I can say that now. I was heartbroken for the experience, and it took me a minute to understand that. And under the guise of COVID, so many people changed. So many people were like, just it's COVID. No one has to know. And in a way, not owning that story fully, like just saying what I said, I think keeps the person from actually getting through it. I don't know if a year ago we spoke, I would have said this so plainly.
Yeah. No. So, I mean, and it takes a long time. I mean, so your son was not born yet, right?
He was not born yet. I had my son in a very, modern, newfound kind of way. I had my son by a surrogate, and I had just found the person I was going to work with. I had wonderful embryos, but I was sort of building that vessel at the same time that this happened.
Yeah.
And there was COVID. So I would say that my life, both personally and professionally, has changed wildly in the last 5 years. And yet it's closer to the beginning and the core of my career now than it had been for the previous 5 years at WME.
How long did it take you to find the opportunity through the grief and the sadness of all of that?
Well, that's an interesting question. I would say it was phased for me.
Yeah.
So you do hear from so many people in that moment, because if you've been somewhere for 25 years, if you cultivate it, you have a cadre of people who ride for you, who, if you are lucky and have done great work for them, follow you somewhere else or connect to you. So a lot of outpouring of like, what are you doing? Let's talk. And then things kind of go quiet because I didn't know what I was doing. And all I knew was that I'm going to have a kid. And that's not necessarily something they needed to be involved in. So I took a beat and I consulted for one or two people off the books. Because I was also a little shaken for more than a while about, if I'm not Andy McNicol calling from WME or from WME, like who am I professionally?
Yeah.
Who am I professionally? What's more important in that?
You find out. Yeah. You find out who your real friends are and who, because same thing happened to me when I quit Rock Nation. I was like, wait, who am I that is not the person that represents Jay-Z and, and Beyonce and, works with, Rihanna, like, who am I then, And
what is my professional value? Like, are you valuing the Andy McNicol in that sentence or the WME in that sentence? Yeah. And I think I too valued the WME in that sentence early on in that transition more than I valued the Andy McNicol. And I had a very good friend and client in Norma Kamali, who has, done sort of been such a trailblazer in so many ways and has done things her own way. And she was like, when I was starting to think about what I was going to do next, she's like, start something with your name in it, because your biggest offering is you. Don't call it something else. Don't do it. It was like one of the great branding exercises I was able to witness. She was like, the only thing of value that you're selling against a bigger agency, a bigger structure, isn't infrastructure or contracts or anything. It's not any of that. It's you. And lean into that. And that was she was the beginning of me being like, oh, I do still have something to offer of value. And if she sees it and I can make that conversation, okay, let me think about what I want. And it's funny, like I remember calling some clients or people I worked with where they were like, I'm here for you. Like you said, I'm going to ride with you. And then other people wanted me to commiserate with them over the fact that I was no longer at WME. And I was like, okay, like.
Well, you need a little bit of both, right? You know what I mean? You need a little because there is anger and resentment, and you do want to get that out of your way so then you can focus on the positive, because we're human beings, okay?
Very true.
Everybody's like, no, just turn it around. It's like, no, I got to be pissed for a minute, It's like I represent so many women, who get fired and laid off, whatever, in riffs or whatever it is. People, they get fired for being a woman, their tone, being pregnant, having cancer. I mean, I've seen it all.
Getting to be over 50. I mean,
getting to be over 50, all of which is illegal, but all of which happens on a daily basis. Okay. And it's okay. I always quote Gloria Steinem, the truth will piss you off and then it'll set you free. Okay. So let's just get pissed for a minute. Tell me all the shit, and then we can move on. Okay. You can hold that on, but it's really important for you to do that instead of just being like, no, it's all love. It's like, no, there's some fucked up shit that happens, in particular in the corporate world, to women, and to women only. There's a lot of stuff that happens. It does not happen to men. And, cause they can't get pregnant. Okay.
Not yet. Let's see what happens.
We literally create every single human being. So, I understand all of that. And, we were talking a little bit before about, you saying that you didn't really think that you could even talk about this before. The other book that's on behind All the Cool Girls Get Fired, which is amazing. And I'm so happy that Laura and,
Christina.
Have written this book, so talk a little bit about that and what gave you that kind of.
This was a really wonderful and interesting scenario because I've known Laura and Christina. Again, I think it's about the tribe you surround yourself with as well. There's sort of these patterns, and I'm sure that in all of these, interviews, certain things keep coming up. And mentorship is something that I was lucky enough to truly have at WME with two wonderful women. But I also had a class of people that we came up with at the same time. I think starting at big companies gives you that sense of oh, you interned with so-and-so, you were assistants at the same time, you were young lawyers. I had a group of people that I came up with in, let's call it loosely, the media industry. Laura and Christina were two of them. I knew how they worked. I knew who they were. I knew that Laura had gotten fired because we were personally friends at that time. Christina I had long admired and had worked with, but I didn't know her as well. And so when she got fired and they decided to write a book, the interesting thing is I didn't represent the book. I work with them in a strategic partnerships and branding kind of way, which is what are the businesses we're going to build out of this book? And what happens is that there is a halo effect when you write a book like this is highly prescriptive that you could actually build a brand behind it. And so really learning from them, it's wonderful. And that's the thing about the client business. I wonder if you feel this way. I learn from my clients. It's sort of like going to graduate school in a subject that each of them believe in. And so reading this book, which is their personal stories and a lot of what happens next immediately in terms of who do you call? Cobra? Who do you do this? And I remember feeling that way. It's also a lot of other people's stories, Katie Couric, Mika Brzezinski, who both have excellent ones. And all of a sudden I was exactly what the book should do. Oh, I'm not alone. And I don't feel like I can't own that story anymore. In fact, not saying it out loud is silly. It's part of my story. It's silly. Not owning my story in this full way of being that it's part of my career trajectory. I can't fully own my successes in this moment if I don't own what happened, what preceded them. Yeah. And I had just been sort of being COVID took an off ramp. I had all these great euphemisms, but I wasn't I got laid off, and excellent people get laid off. I am not less than it for it. It taught me different ways to work, quite frankly. And so I think many of the things that are in my toolbox now and what I offer clients, including Christina and Laura, aren't things that I was able to bring to the table at WME.
Yeah, you couldn't have anyway because you were hired to do a specific thing. And it's when you work for somebody else, you're not controlling your destiny. You're making money for them and controlling, helping them build their destiny.
And there's no right. And the other thing is there's no right answer to that question. If they're paying you a wonderful amount and the healthcare is dope and all this other stuff, And this is what their remit is. That's the job. I think I was operating on the, well, I do this so well and I want to do work this way. Big corporations work the way they work for their success. There's nothing wrong with that. But that's what that is. You cannot go in there, even at the top, because you have shareholders you're responsible for in many of these situations, unless it's your own company. And even then you're responsible for paying all these people on time. You're always in conversation in these larger places. And it's constant adjustment and agreement to what you're signing up for. And the minute you're like, I don't know if I want to do this, you're planning how you walk out the door.
Exactly. No, it's amazing. And, let's head on it a little bit because we're both single moms by choice. Like how much did that, can you imagine, right? Because I've done both. I've been in the company that was super, super demanding. Could you imagine having your son like while at WME, even though you had planned everything, during that?
I will say I have a deep respect for my former colleagues who did it and did it before COVID when there was we were in at 8:30 and when the day was over, the day was over. I, of course, was never really an 8:30 kind of gal, but that was the mandate and that's what you did. And that was the culture. And I think it was everybody's work culture. I had my son in a time where people were rethinking what that looked like. And I'm so glad for it because I don't think I would be the mother. And I don't even know if we've spoken about this. I often wonder if I had my son when I was a bit younger, I would have more energy. I would be more in line with the other parents in his school. Right now I'm older and I think about that, not in a particularly morbid kind of way, but just in a reality-based kind of way. Yeah. I'm single. I am the provider and I am also his emotional person. Like if he loses me, we have a wonderful family, but I think about these things.
Of course.
But I think, who would I have been? But I think would have been tremendously hard to be at a large organization that demanded a lot of my time and in a structure where I was also fighting to be partner and fighting for some airspace. I look at my dear friends, many of whom have done it, and I had respect for them before. I am wowed by them now. I don't know. I don't know any other way. I had and have a lot of flexibility in my schedule, and I am very clear about how I want to parent and the time I want to give to it, and have made allowances for that in my career.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I will say, the other thing is choosing to have your kids by yourself. You usually do that because you haven't found the partner, right, to do it. Not necessarily, maybe somebody wants to do it. But one of the a couple of things that are advantageous about doing it a little bit later are, I've already done all the partying. Like, I don't need to do any of that. You know what I mean? It's like, it's great. Like, it was great going to your party. Like, but being out past like 11 is insane for me because I was out past 11 the majority of my adult life. 11 was early. Okay.
I was going to say, I was like, that's kind. I mean, you were leaving your house.
I've done all the partying. I've gone to all the places. I've met all the people. I've had sex with all the guys. I have done it all. Okay. Not all the guys. You know what I mean? I dated all the rock stars. I did it all. Okay. And also I had the experience and my career was set. So It's like, that was done. And so I know there's so many women like talking and thinking about having kids on their own. And, it's amazing and it's great. And, because if you really want it, then it's a compromise, not a sacrifice. Right. And, but that's the great news about, waiting, seeing you find somebody and then you go, okay, it doesn't have to be in your 40s, it could be in your late 30s. But by then, hopefully you've done all the things too that, we've done.
I wasn't confused about who I was when I made the decision. Exactly. I wasn't doing it from a place of fear or lack. I was doing it from a deep desire to be a mother that I knew in some truly it's not like I've had these hits of like knowing that often in my life. Like I am a Libra. I can talk it any other, like 7 ways till Sunday. I can talk it. This was just a deep knowing. Like this is deeply something I want to do. I will regret not doing it. And I'm going to figure this out. And with the help of my mother and wonderful people and I think being a single mother and a professional in the world, a wonderful woman by the name of Laura Rister, who is a producer, a movie producer. You were somebody I spoke to, but Laura really helped me see that I could do this process as well in the type of work that we did. And we weren't even close friends when she truly helped me out. I think we all also help each other out. Like, oh, you need this person, you need that doctor, you need this lawyer. And it was just a giving and being of service to somebody else who really wanted to be a mom. And that has helped me. And so I feel like a tremendous desire to pass that forward. So whoever calls me and is like, let's talk about it, I'm like, absolutely, let's talk about it.
Exactly the same. I remember running into you in the lobby of WME and you're like, hey, I have to talk to you. And I was like, I like, what? And you're like, oh, kid. I was like, do it. Don't look back. Call me. What do you need? Yes.
And
I'll talk to anybody who wants to know about it.
And that's the tribe. And I think I've brought up tribe once or twice, but that is also proven to be very, very important to my success personally and professionally, is having a tribe, having people you call on who've seen you at highs and lows, when things are going well, when things aren't going so well, forgive you, give you some grace at the times that you're not, because there are some people who want to be there on the high, and you hear this all the time. They want to be in your successes, want to call you, what are you doing now? But when there are some things that aren't going as well, they don't want to be there. You need to see the arc of something. And I do think being in any career for 20 plus years, you see a lot of arcs, not only of yourself, but of your clients. And it's important to acknowledge them. And so it was a really interesting time, but having Luke changed the way I worked, certainly changed my definition of success. And it also coincided with me beginning my own business, joining a different firm, who's the partners of whom I adore, but is much more specific and focused in one area than WME. And having seen both, because I get a lot from clients of like, well, the big agency or the small bespoke one. And often I speak to both. Different things are right at different parts of people's climbs.
Yeah, exactly. Well, in doing that, for advice for women who do want to like build their brand or, write a book, like what do you find is the most helpful that they really need to understand before even coming to you or, even hiring you on the AMstudio side?
I think the most important thing I will say is to start. The idea that somebody else is going to know your story better than you is a fallacy, or someone you wait, or it's sort of like, that old adage about, when you find a relationship, it's sort of like, oh, wait till you're ready. Wait till I do this. Wait till I do that. It's start. We have so much at our disposal now in terms of writing content, putting up captions on Instagram, if video is your thing, Reels, TikTok. Like there's a way for you to start experimenting with the types of things you want to say that involves no one else. The idea that someone else is going to figure this out for you is, again, simply not true. You've got to get in there, figure out what's important to you, and start experimenting in whatever platform or way feels native to you. Substack has become a huge force in our business, which was not necessarily something people were gravitating towards 2 years ago. In fact, for some publishers, those Substack numbers are more important than Instagram or TikTok, at which case, do TikTok, creators, are people going to follow them somewhere else to buy something? Those are the questions that I'm interested in. It's not just platform, it's how you match with your platform. So if you have an inkling that you want to start experimenting, go for it. There's no barrier to entry and there's no failure. Then I always say to people, what do you get asked the most? And generally speaking, it's in the first question is probably always where your content, first book, first way of connecting to a community should begin. It's either in the first 2 questions, first 3 questions you get asked by anyone, a friend, somebody who's seen you on the Today Show, like with you. What are the questions you get asked the most? The beginning of a content business or a content play, as I like to call it, has to answer that question. If not, the reader, the user, the audience feels cheated.
Yeah.
So we want to build trust. So start now and then really be honest about what you get asked, because there's a differential between what you want to say and what you get asked. And that first connection, because it is a 2-way street, has to be in that Venn diagram of what do you want to say, but what do people want an answer from you?
Right. Yeah. Oh my God. So good. So good. Amazing. Thank you so much. Look, I know we got to let you go, but we have one question we ask everybody on this podcast. And that is, what is the worst advice you've ever received?
For me, it was fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
I think that it's such an idiotic expression. I hear it constantly. And all that it's doing is underlining not being really authentic and truthful. Like, one of the things that I think has been helpful to me in my career, and people say, is like knowing what I don't know. I call you, like, I'm not a lawyer. I don't want to tell somebody something. Like, again, go to your community, but also you don't have to know everything. People sometimes want to learn things with you. They feel connected to you in that. I think things that build honesty builds trust, builds relationships. So if I'm out there being like, I know all this and I do all that, and like, I got it, it's a false, it's starting something with a false veneer on it. And that has proven not to work for me long term. Yeah.
No, I love it, because usually, like, some people think fake it till you make it. It's like you get a new job and, look, men apply if they're 70% prepared, and women, they need to be 120%. But, as women, fake it till you make it is, we have to know everything, right? It's like we're the creative and the attorney and the accountant, and like, we should not be doing those things. We should do what we're really good at and hire the people around us and build our tribe and, get advice from other people, because we cannot do everything on our own, and we don't do it as parents. So it's
we shouldn't. And that's a pressure we put on ourselves. Like, that to me is actually not being, again, connected to who and it gets in the way of what I'm good at.
Yeah.
And what I also love is that when somebody hires me or somebody hires you, in a funny way, the halo effect is they get all of us. Because you call me and say, hey, I have this client thinking about a book. And I'm like, hey, I know this executive. Like, the amount of people that are connected by sort of our communities as we grow is important. And I think that happens when you lean into the truth of the situation. So I think earlier in my career, I was very much like, that was a piece of advice that I got and I used. And what I now know in this stage is actually raise your hand. Raise your hand. No one expects you to know everything.
Yeah. True. I love it. Thank you so much for this, Andy. If people want to find you, how can they do that?
They can find me at McNicol on Instagram. Slide into my DMs. I answer all of them, or look me up. I'm on LinkedIn, and I am on, you could find my website and send me an email that way.
Amazing. Okay. Thank you so much for being on this episode of Taking Care of Lady Business. Until next time, I'm Jennifer Justice. Thanks to MedJet for supporting the Lady Business podcast. If you're hospitalized or your security is threatened while traveling, they can get you home. I'm a MedJet member and have been for years. Everyone who travels should be. Enroll before your next trip at medjet.com. Thanks for tuning in to Taking Care of Lady Business. Don't forget to like, subscribe, rate, and review. And also share this episode with a friend who needs that extra push to own their success. If you want more strategy stories and exclusive content, follow us on TikTok at Taking Care of Lady Business, on Instagram at thejustice.dept and Jennifer Justice L, or visit our website at thejusticedept.com. Taking Care of Lady Business is a production of Lady Business LLC.